Coming up on this week's Headline News. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband attacked by a home invader.
And then Claire Becker gives you information on how to vote.
And finally, sports reporter Peyton Nelson gives us the sports headline.
Stay tuned and informed on this week's JBCN Headline News.
I'm Brendan.
And I'm Chen Xu.
Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi, was attacked by a home invader on October 28th in San Francisco. The attacker was named David DePape. During the invasion, Mr. Pelosi was able to call 911. Police found him and DePape struggling over control of a hammer at the time of arrival. The attacker was able to strike Pelosi in the head with the hammer shortly before being tackled by officers.
In an affidavit signed by FBI Special Agent Stephanie Miner, the investigation concluded that DePape set out to detain Nancy Pelosi, who at the time was in Washington. After being arrested, San Francisco police interviewed DePape, who said he would let her go, but if she had lied, he would break her kneecaps.
Paul at this time is doing well. He underwent surgery for his skull, right arm, and hands. Doctors expect him to make a full recovery. With the upcoming election, we are happy to represent the last McCarthy Minute to give you information on how to vote.
Hello, my name is Claire Betker and welcome to the McCarthy Minute. Today, we are going to talk about voting at the College of St. Benedict and St. John's University. Midterms are on November 8th, and it is shaping up to be a tight race with a lot of important issues at stake. So today, I will answer some of the important questions about voting at CSB-SJU. How do I vote? Where do I vote? When do I vote? And who do I vote for? All are important questions you will need to answer before November 8th. How do I vote? Your main task for being able to vote this November will be either registering to vote or requesting your ballot. If you are a student from Minnesota, you can go online to the Minnesota Secretary of State website and register there. It should take less than 5 minutes, and all you need is your driver's license or state ID. If you are already registered to vote, you can also re-register to your college address so you can vote at CSB-SJU. However, make sure you submit your registration by October 18th. Registration in Minnesota closes 20 days before Election Day, but reopens the day of the election. That means you can register at the same time you go in to vote if you are voting in person. You can also use the Minnesota Secretary of State website to request your absentee ballot if you want to vote in your home district or want to vote in advance. It is up to you where you decide to vote. Just make sure you are registered and request your ballot if necessary. If you are an out-of-state student, you should register and request your ballot as soon as possible. Many states require you to register or submit your ballot a certain amount of days in advance, so you should register and turn in your ballot as soon as possible. Please check vote.org for absentee ballot deadlines or with your Secretary of State. It only takes a few minutes to make sure your voice is heard this upcoming election. Where do I vote? If you are an out-of-state student or are from Minnesota and have decided to vote in your home district, you will have to request your absentee ballot and vote in advance. If you are registered to vote on campus, where you vote depends on where you live. St. Joseph is split up into multiple districts, so it is important to know where you are supposed to vote in person. If you live on campus at CSB or SJU, you will be voting in District 13. People who live at St. Ben's will be voting at Heritage Hall on Minnesota Street. However, if you live in Centenn, you will be voting at the St. Joseph Government Center on College Ave. If you live in town, where you vote will depend on what side of College Ave and what side of the highway you are on. If you are confused about where to vote as a student at CSB, the City of St. Joseph has an election webpage with a map of the precincts. As for Johnny's, all on-campus residents will be able to vote at the Great Hall. However, people who live in Vincent Court 41 to 60 will have to go to Avon Town Hall. I know that this is confusing, but if you have any questions, you can look up your address on the Office of the Minnesota Secretary of State webpage. If you follow the Find Out Where You Vote link, you can enter your address and see what precinct you are in. On-campus residents should make sure they include their residence hall so they ensure they are given the right district. Where you vote boils down to what district you are voting in, and then either requesting your ballot or recognizing what voting station serves your precinct come Election Day. When do I vote? When you vote depends on the manner you are voting in. Absentee in person, absentee by mail, or in person on Election Day. If you would like to go in and vote early in person, all residents of Stearns County are able to cast an absentee ballot at St. Cloud City Hall or at the Stearns County Service Center. This starts 46 days prior to Election Day, so it is already open for those who wish to vote in advance. There's also early in-person absentee voting at the St. Joseph Government Center 1 week prior to Election Day, but this is restricted to residents of St. Joe. Early absentee voting by mail varies by state, so it is important to be informed about the deadlines in your district. In Minnesota, you can request your ballot at any time as long as it is returned before Election Day. The state recommends sending your ballot back at least 7 days in advance to ensure that your vote makes it on time. Make sure you are aware of the deadlines in your district and register to vote, request your ballot, and return your ballot according to state guidelines. This will help ensure your vote is counted. For those not voting early or absentee, Election Day is November 8th. Voting is from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., so as long as you're in line at the correct location before 8, you can cast your ballot. Who do I vote for? Once you know where and when you are voting, the next big step is knowing who you are voting for. There are several major races in Minnesota, such as governor and lieutenant governor, as well as the Minnesota Secretary of State. Many other races will be specific to the district you are voting in. In District 13, you'll be voting for positions like U.S. Representative, State Auditor, Attorney General, State Senator, State Representative, and judicial seats. People voting in St. Joseph will also have the opportunity to vote for the mayor of St. Joe, while those voting in District 14 will see CSB-SJU Professor Eric Putnam running against Tama Theus for District 14 State Senator. One key way to know who will be running in your area is to look at sample ballots for your district. Minnesota residents can look on the Minnesota Secretary of State webpage for this information. Out-of-state students should be able to find sample ballots on their Secretary of State's webpage as well, but for those who can't find it, can use resources like Ballotpedia's sample ballot to see what positions are up for election and who is vying to fill them. From there, you can do research about the candidates and make a smart choice when you cast your ballot. Voting is one of the biggest responsibilities American citizens have, and it is vital that everyone who is eligible to vote makes sure that their voice is heard. It is also important to use your voice for those who cannot vote. CSB-SJU has a large community of international students who are unable to vote, and it is important to remember that your decisions impact your peers without representation. Elections shape the future of our communities, our states, and our nation as a whole, so do your part and cast your ballot this November. If you have any questions about voting rules or regulations, please email the McCarthy Center staff at mccarthycenter@csbsju.edu. Thank you and have a great day.
Finally, we go to Peyton Nelson with this week's sports headline.
Hi, I'm Peyton Nelson. Welcome to this week's sports headline here at Target Center in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Unfortunately, the Minnesota Timberwolves just suffered their 5th loss on the season to the undefeated Bucks. The Timberwolves' new record is now 4-5. Now moving on to the baseball side of things, the Houston Astros lead the World Series 3-2 over the Phillies. Game 6 will take place this weekend in Houston. Now moving on to the football side of things, the Minnesota Vikings will head to Washington to take on the Commanders. The Minnesota Vikings are 6-1 after last week's win against Arizona. And to wrap things up, the World Cup is officially 2 weeks away. The U.S. will face against Wales November 24th. That's all for this week's Sports Roundup. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, don't forget to tune in next week. I'm Peyton Nelson, here from Target Center, Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Thank you. That's all for this week. Be sure to tune in next time.